Let's get to the morning papers quickly, a little bit later than normal. Stuart Hughes joins us from the BBC News, as does Sir Deian Hopkin, historian, Professor Sir Deian Hopkin. Deian Baradag, can you kick off for us?
Thank you very much. Well, because we're going to be very precise on this story, the one I'm very interested in, as you expect me, as a historian, as academic, is the decision to have visas for health workers and students. It's in the Indie and the Telegraph, because we want the brightest and the best, but at the same time, we've got to replenish the health service after Brexit, when people probably won't be turning up. Why now? I mean, for students, we could have done this years ago. People have been arguing to get visas for students to stay over here, international students, to come here and spend time after they graduate. And the question really is, this sounds like an act of desperation because, of course, we know that as a result of COVID and the rest of it, overseas students are not going to be coming over here. So what you say is, well, if you're going to come here, you can stay here for 3 years, and then comes a little bit in the Telegraph, to get a job. And I'm not sure that's what's intended at all. So we're yet in another policy vacuum. We don't really know who will be coming, either the brothers are best or just the people we need most.
Stuart.
Well, overnight we saw President Trump wearing a face mask in public for the first time as he visited a military hospital. And the Prime Minister's hinted it may soon be mandatory to wear a face covering when we visit shops in England. And there's a lot of consideration in the Sunday papers to this must-have fashion accessory for summer 2020. And not everyone thinks wearing a face mask in public is a good idea. Don't turn us into face mask police, shop staff urges, one of the headlines in the Sunday Times. It says retailers are worried about possible violence if they try to police this and force shoppers to cover their faces. And would it make any difference anyway? As the Observer points out, scientists remain divided. On the one hand, a professor of healthcare at Oxford University gives a stark warning, saying we're facing a massive public health emergency, and unless we start wearing face coverings, thousands more people are going to die. On the other hand, there's an epidemiologist at University College London quoted in the Observer who counters that, saying, my worry is that masks are just a pretense to ease the lockdown and try to help the economy.
Oh, difficult. Deian.
Well, yes, the other story I think is very interesting is Leicester. We've got this problem that a number of areas now are going to go back into lockdown. Leicester, Bradford, all sorts of places. And in Leicester, it said it's because there were conditions in the factories which actually accentuated the illnesses. Priti Patel, according to the Sunday Times, it says that political sensitivities accounted for the failure by police to detect problems of illegal shops, sweatshops and so on. I wonder whether that's the real story. Because, I'm not being political here, as you probably guess I wouldn't be, would I? But a 25% reduction in public health inspectors since 2015. There are no public health inspectors to go around these places, quite apart from the cuts in police numbers, which the Home Secretary seems to have forgotten about, because there are 20,000 fewer police. How can they go around everywhere? This does raise some serious questions, however, about the disparity, the social disparity in the COVID-19 illness. The reality is that it is people in poor areas, people having work in appalling conditions, people working under desperate pressures, family pressures, and the rest of it. They're the ones most susceptible. And this has to be addressed in the follow-up to this as we inquire.
Stuart, what else have you seen?
Well, the Mail on Sunday's been running pieces critical of China for weeks now. It's clearly a very deliberate campaign, and this morning it's got Beijing in its sights again. On its front page it says, ministers fear China could unleash a devastating online attack dubbed a cyber 9/11. It says senior sources say a perfect storm of rows over Hong Kong, Huawei, COVID-19 could lead to an attack by Chinese-based hackers. But when you dig down, I've got to say it's a pretty confused piece, because on the one hand it says that evidence is emerging that China is preparing to attack the West, and on the other hand, Britain's cybersecurity centre says it's not expecting a rise in attack. And in the Observer, their leader writer makes an important observation. It says many of those who are being so vocal about China now were strangely silent 5 years ago when President Xi Jinping was offered all the pomp and ceremony of a state visit to the UK, and when David Cameron heralded a golden era in UK-China relations. So where were those voices 5 years ago that are coming up and putting their heads above the parapet now?
Deian, we have 30 seconds for one more story.
Yes, one more story. It's a Welsh story, and I'm delighted to hear the Brexit Party have decided, led by former Rochester MP Mark Reckless, he wants to campaign to end devolution, with 22% in favour. Is this the last gasp? And I have to ask you, Vaughan, what is the Brexit Party for after Brexit? I'd just like to know a bit more of that. Or is it just going to be the new anti-devolution party?
Answers on a postcard, please. You can listen again to this programme on the BBC Sounds app for music, radio, podcasts, for kind advance notice, guests and subjects, by following at Wales Politics on Twitter. And there's more Welsh Politics on BBC One with Politics Wales at 10. After the news is All Things Considered. This has been Sunday Supplement. Bore da i chi.